I guess this is it the last talk of the last workshop of the last day? So I don't know if I should be honored or petrified. Maybe a little bit of both, but before digging into the talk, I just wanted to make sure that all congratulations and thanks to the organizers of the workshop, of course, for the conference. It's been an amazing event, so I just really wanted to not forget to thank you all. I don't know who set up the title of my talk. I think the first half is from Marcel, Higher Education in the 21st Century. That's kind of a grandiose title, and I just wanted to add a little note that this is going to be a romantic view about it. Romantic not in the sense of being opposed to modernity, but maybe in the sense of dreaming a little bit, or at least, as you'll see, reacting to some fixed structures. Because everybody has talked about education already in this workshop and the importance of it, the fact that we need to upskill or reskill a lot of people, the fact that the pace of technology is so fast these days that if you get a diploma from anywhere, even a great institution like ours, in 5 years, you'll probably have to learn new tricks if you want to keep progressing in your career. And I happen to think that we need to change a lot of things in education. And I'll give you an example of why education is maybe not well calibrated these days. And the example is that of a yogurt. Right? So open your fridge and imagine you pick up a yogurt. There's a date on the yogurt, the expiry date. And you've all made that experience, or you know someone who does that. They look at the date, say it's today, or yesterday, to be more precise, and they decide that since the date is passed, they won't eat the yogurt. They're going to throw it, right? And that's kind of ridiculous, no? Because, of course, the yogurt doesn't have like a switch, and at midnight it decides that it's past the date, and so it should be bad. But if you think of it, that's what we do with students, right? You study at a university, and until you've passed the last grade of the last exam of the last session, you don't get your diploma. So just before you pass the last exam, you're not a qualified engineer. But suddenly, because you've made the 5.2 in the very last technical course that you pass after 5 years, you become one. It's like a little bit the yogurt that is suddenly changed from being nothing to being something special. And there's a reason for that, is because we still think of education along lines that are completely outdated. And I like to think of them as, maybe you remember these three unities of the classical theater, the unit of action, the unit of location, the unit of duration. It's the same thing at the university. There's a unity of action, right? Everybody does the same. It's pretty much what you're doing right now. They're just sitting for a long time in auditoriums listening to a professor and someone who teaches them something. And almost everybody does the same. There's a unity of location. You do it at a single place. Everybody comes on campus between 8 to 7 and you do it there. And there's a unity of duration. It's like the yogurt. It happens between 18 and 25 years old. And afterwards, it's over. It's finished. You're not supposed to learn anymore. And that's a little bit strange because if you've, and I'm sure you have learned a lot today that we need to continuously update our skills, and of course, well past 25. So that certainly has to disappear. And if you think of where these three unities come from, it's just the past. It's organization. The unity of location is just because that was the only technology, so to say, we had to educate people, is to bring them somewhere. Now we can do better, of course, and you've heard that online learning, or at least blended learning, is something of high interest. Duration is something that was just because it's specified by law, right? There is absolutely not a single ounce of pedagogy in the fact that you have to study for 5 years and graduate in 5 years. There's not an ounce of pedagogy in the fact that you have to learn in a classroom. That was just the massification of education roughly at the turn of the Industrial Revolution, because we needed a lot of well-trained people. There's just no pedagogy behind this idea. There's no pedagogy in the idea that you always that you all have to listen to a professor. There's many ways of learning. You and I don't learn in the same ways, but we do all learn in the same way because it's forced upon us, because there was no other ways of doing it in the past. But that's the past. So if we have to talk about education in the 21st century, we have to get free of these fixed ways of doing things and try to imagine what we should do better and how we should implement it. So I think the first thing is that we have to break free of these unities. And let's first break down the unity of duration. So this is, I just take the example of higher education, but you could probably mirror this in other sectors. But this is the standard path if you come to a university like EPFL. You'll do a bachelor in something, it will take 3 years, maybe a little bit more, but not much more. Then you'll do a master in something, maybe the same, maybe something else, depends on your choice. You have a little bit of choice, but just a little bit. And then you'll do maybe lifelong learning. So the first thing is, on this campus, there are 2,000 students in the red sector, right, in the master studies. Only 2% of them will ever come back for the lifelong training. 2%. It's very, very small, right? And it's not because they don't feel it's necessary, it's because we were not really equipped for that and because the mindset was still not there. Things are changing, and experiences like the extension school, for instance, really show that it's possible to get more of them. But right now, things are so stratified that once you have your master, you're a qualified engineer, I mean, there's no obligation or there is no incentive, or not much incentive to come back and do lifelong learning. Now, split these 3 categories into what you really learn in these categories. In the bachelor, the first few years, what it really means is that that's a moment where you acquire strong foundations, things that will, in fact, allow you to learn, keep learning all your life. You don't learn a lot of technical skills during the bachelor. I mean, Algebra 101 is interesting, but that's not Algebra 101 that gets you a job, right? And Physics 101 either. But they give you the mindset that you can use afterwards to learn new skills. So it's really foundational. I think it's necessary, right? But it's foundational. And that's also a place, the bachelor, which should be at least a place where you develop key soft skills. These are very important afterwards on the job market. Now I think you transit then to the master. I like to tell students on campus that whatever they will learn in the master is the first thing that they will forget. The most technical skills, the nitty-gritty, quantum computing, blah, 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 is the first thing that will come outdated. Okay? And that's the first thing that you will need to refresh. Okay, so it's interesting, the master, because that's also where you are going to do a lot of projects. So you will learn a lot in the master of very technical, hands-on things that will be immediately useful, but these are the ones that will vanish the quickest. All right? So it's very important. You'll do projects, you'll do internships, you'll go in industry, you'll go in research labs, you will learn dedicated technical skills that will be valid for the next 5 to 10 years. And these are the ones that you will need to refresh. And here is the first claim of why you should break down the unity of duration. For me, there is absolutely no reason why there has to be a barrier between the master and lifelong learning. I like to think that lifelong learning starts right away. Once you've got the right foundations, and that we will talk about a little bit later, you have to think of these foundations, this first diploma, as a passport. It's a passport to traveling all along your life and learning. And the master, I like to think, is not a standalone diploma, or I come to think that maybe in the future it will not be anymore. It's just the first few stamps in this voyage. You've learned the first few skills, these are the stamps in your passport, this is your portfolio, this is what you know, these are your skills. And just like you have to renew your passport every so often, you will have to renew these skills if you want to continue traveling. And so you will come back. Now think of some of the advantages. Think now of the unity of duration. You are a student on campus surrounded by people who have exactly the same age, 18 to 25. The only exception is when you do continuing education. If you come back 15 years afterwards, then maybe you'll share the room with people who are a bit younger, a bit older. Wouldn't it be great if you start doing that earlier on? That as a young, trained student, you start doing projects, learning technical skills, but with people who are a bit older, or maybe much older, who have a lot of experience, who've been on the job market, and who also can coach you and give you experience that your professors cannot. So if you start blurring this frontier between what we call now the master and lifelong learning, there's a lot of things that you can do there. The second thing, and I think this was advocated time and again, is that even during these first few years, you should be allowed to travel at your own rhythm. And the future of education, I firmly believe, is self-paced. The only reason why it's not at the moment, again, is regulations and organization. The fact that we have to all sit into a class at the same moment with the same person for the same amount of years. There is not an ounce of pedagogy or learning science in that fact. All right? So if you really want to teach, and if people really want to learn, the one and only possible way to do it optimally is to allow more self-pace. And there's many ways of doing that. Technology, in particular, is one way of doing it. Online education or blended education allow you to learn at different speeds depending on what you're doing, your history. You might be partially employed. You might be gifted in math, but maybe a bit less so. I'm not saying that you will not learn algebra, but there is no reason why you should learn algebra in one semester if it's possible to spend 2 semesters on it. In a typical bachelor, there's 3 years. That's 120 ECTS credits. Think of it. It's 3 full-time years. Give me any program. I can throw away 50% of it in the trash, thereby leaving 50% of free time. All right? And this free time, you can use it to learn at your own rhythm. If you learn quickly, you learn more. More technical skills, more options. If you learn a little bit more slowly, that's okay. You'll still get to the end of it. There is no reason why we could not or should not implement that way of learning. The unity of action. Whatever you do these days on the web, or if you shop, you get a personalized experience. You get recommendations. That's the image on the left. But think of students trying to pick their paths from the curriculum. That's the image on the right. You're thrown a list of, at EPFL, it's 1,650 courses. Right? And you have to pick from this. This is an age of algorithm. You know, if you give a little bit of information to the registration at EPFL, if you have a bit of idea of what you want to learn, if you have a bit of idea of what you want to become, even if it's vague, there is no reason why we could not help you select these courses and make more personalized recommendations that we do at the moment. So I think education, also in the future, will, or at least should become much more personalized, much less formatting as it is. There is one value in human character. It's differences. If you assemble a team of players, you want them to be complementary, different. If you have only Maradonas, you'll probably score a few goals, but you'll probably get a few goals scored against you as well. Break down the unity of location. This is me. I like to think of me as a good teacher. All right? A couple of years ago, I was still teaching this very important, I like to think, bachelor class. And one of my hobbies is to take selfies with students sleeping during my lectures. So pay attention. There's one there. Pay attention. So this is one of them. I asked permission, of course, for the picture. And after. And I don't know if online learning is the future of education, but I very strongly doubt that on-campus sleeping is. Okay? And so maybe more seriously, I think that more personalized and self-paced wishes clearly point to more online. And I completely agree with one of the previous speakers who said fully online education is maybe behind us already because we've had experience that show people want to connect, and I come to that, and I think it's completely true. But at least blended and more online is definitely ahead of us because you really want to avoid the situation. Where is pedagogy in this picture? And I'm a trained professor. Okay, so it's time to go to the conclusions of it, the romantics view. Here is why I use the word romantic, okay? You remember these unities? Place, time, and action, right? This was the classical French theater. These were broken by the romantics, right? And one of the first to break that was Victor Hugo. Not comparing myself to Victor Hugo, but what they said is that we should, get rid of fixed rules because we have no bounds to imagination. And so this is what I think. I think we really must go towards a system where we keep those strong foundations because they will allow you to keep learning all your life. That's very important. I value the fact that companies make education in-house, but they are, with all respect to them, they are giving skills that are useful for their workers. And I completely side with Ken, who was saying there's also a matter of public policy there. We have to make sure that we can train people to go elsewhere, or we can train people who work in SMEs who don't have the means to do these internal programs. And you can only do that, I believe, via public systems. And we happen to be one. I think the role of universities in reskilling or upskilling will become much stronger, and not just reskilling and upskilling our people, but everyone. So strong foundations, students will acquire at their own pace, and that will help them learn lifelong. I think a large part of education will occur online and will be much more personalized, and that's not even a bet. The wheels are already in motion for that. And by the way, these two things point to the last one, and I think this was also hinted before. This also means that we have to reinvent a little bit the role of campuses. We were saying blended learning. I strongly believe that campuses have a role to play there. They are places of connect. There are places where you get coached. There are places where you do projects. And if you can do that with greater diversity of age, for instance, greater diversity of experience, that's so much better. This will enable peer-to-peer coaching and learning from many others, and not just from one person in the room. Thank you.